Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Frameworks Pinata workshop, Adding Analytics to Frames. And joining us today is Steve Simkins, who will be taking us through this session. And with that, I'll pass it over to Steve to get the session started.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Rory, for introducing me. Yeah, so my name's Steve, and I'm the head of developer relations for Pinata. I've been with Pinata for a little over 2 years now, and you'll find me doing anything from support, making content, writing documentation, and maybe building some example apps like Photocaster.xyz if you want to check that out. It's a Farcaster client we built as an example using some Pinata tech. And if you want to find me on Farcaster, you can get me by my handle. I'm Steve Dillon dev.eth, and that's pretty much my handle everywhere else as well. And I'm based out of Chattanooga, Tennessee. It's a nice little mountain city that I like to call home. So just to go over some basics, what is Pinata? So Pinata actually has a lot of deep roots in hackathons. We started at ETH Berlin in 2018, and we make it an effort to participate and support hackathons as much as possible, be with the developers, and maybe build something while we're there and see what we can push ourselves to do. It's always a lot of fun. And exactly answer the question, what is Pinata? Pinata runs IPFS and Farcaster infrastructure. We have a lot of experience with scaling IPFS as we have over 600,000 registered users over our history and have supported much of the NFT boom and a lot of the needs for IPFS throughout the years. And we've been in and writing about Farcaster for a little over a year, and we've seen a lot of potential and use cases for IPFS and Farcaster work together. And so we've been focusing on that more and providing more infrastructure and tools. And the goals just kind of stay the same. All in all, we want to make IPFS and Farcaster easy. We made IPFS really easy back in the day, and we want to do the same thing for Farcaster now. So to answer what is frame analytics, it's basically the ability to send and retrieve interaction with your frames. You can make a connection between your Farcaster account and your Pinata account, and then through the either installed code on the FDK or through the API, allows you to send and retrieve analytics data from your frame interactions and gives you some real-time data, which is fun. And then from there, you can either access it through the Pinata app. We have a nice dashboard with lots of different views, which we'll get into. And that's great if you just want some simple, basic feedback information. But we also have, the Frame Analytics API, and this is what powers our FDK and the Pinata app dashboard behind the scenes, gives you more granular results, and then you could feed those into an app outside of Pinata. So if you wanted to build an app for consumers that gives them analytics on their frames, this is something you could do with that, which is really cool. And so how to add frame analytics to it's really simple, actually. It's just 3 steps. First step is going to be creating or connecting your Farcaster account that you've already, created. Create an API key, and then basically call analytics within your frame code base. So let's go over each of those real quick. Connecting Farcaster is really simple. All you do is click on the top right corner of your profile button, click on interactions or integrations, sorry, and you'll see one for Farcaster. Click the sign in button. It's going to give you a QR code, and you'll want to scan that QR code with your phone that you already have Workcast installed in and logged in with. And that'll just prompt to sign in. Just swipe to sign in, and then bam, you're done. And then you want to go ahead and create an API key, which is also really simple. Have an API key tab on the left-hand side, click on that. And then you're going to see a create key or new key in the top right. From there, you can give it a name, and you can give it scope permissions if you'd like to. I typically advise maybe trying admin first, because a lot of people will scope their permissions and then forget that, they scoped them and then ask, like, why is this not working? Really easy to forget. So maybe start with admin and then go from there if you want to scope it further. And once you click create, it's going to give you 3 things. It's going to give you an API key secret, and then it's going to give you a very long JWT. Definitely copy all those down and keep them somewhere safe. But the primary one you want to use throughout most of our ecosystem is that longer JWT, which we'll see here in just a minute. And then it's just a matter of using the analytics within your Frames code base. And we have multiple different ways that you can do this. One of the most popular is through our FDK or Farcaster development kit. And importing it is pretty easy into a JavaScript project. And all you have to do is import it, then create a new instance of the Pinata FDK using your JWT that we just spoke about earlier. And then once you have that, you're going to need 3 parameters. 2 are required, 1 is optional. The first one is the frame data. And if you've been working or learning about frames today or recently, that frame data is what's sent from the Farcaster client, like Warpcast, that has all the information about that frame interaction. It's going to have things like the FID of the user, it's going to have what button they pressed, all that stuff. So you just want to pass that whole raw body into the analytics function. And then the other two that you'll have is the frame ID, which is required. And this can be pretty much any string, any name that you want your frame to be referenced by. And then you have an optional custom ID. And the custom ID is something if you want to have like, one frame name, but then have different interactions and label them differently and get that information more granular, you can specify that custom ID and put that in there as well. And then, at the bottom there, it's really simple, just fdk.sendAnalytics, pass in all three of those things, and then bam, you're basically sending that data off to Pinata. And we also have Frog middleware. So if you are using Frog to build your frames, frog.fm, we have an even easier way to integrate the Pinata analytics. You kind of import and create an instance just like you did before, except this time after you create your app with Frog, just do app.use, define the path that you want your analytics to be fired on. You can do multiples if you want, multiple calls of this, and then just call the FDK analytics middleware, pass in that required frame ID or the custom ID as well. And of course, if you want to get even more flexible and maybe work outside of JavaScript or TypeScript, you can just use the raw API. And again, very simple to use. You just have the endpoint of Farcaster Frames interactions. It's a post request, pass in your Pinata JWT as the bearer token. And for the data, it's going to be pretty much all the same things. You have the custom ID that's just optional, the data field, which is going to be that frame data we talked about earlier, and then the frame ID. That's it. And then once you have sent your frame analytics from your frame, then you can start viewing the results. And one way to do that is through the Pinata app. And as you see here in the demo, it's a really nice, beautiful dashboard that our team has put together and allows you to look at different frames, break it down by different dates, different paths, different interactions, look at buttons, all sorts of really cool things, and great way just to get useful data about your frames that people are using, which is cool. Now, the other way you could do it though too is through our API. So it's going to be the same endpoint, except this time it's going to be a GET request. And you'll get a response back that has, your time periods, interactions, total interactions, and unique interactions. And with this endpoint, there are multiple different queries you can make to filter those results. If you want to filter by button ID, if you want to filter by frame ID, custom ID, so you can get really particular with those results if you want to do that as well. And just some examples and some interesting use cases of the analytics API beyond just like giving somebody some helpful information, you can actually feed this and build really interesting frames and apps with it. So on the left here, we have our Pinata 500 racing app. And you'll notice here that you have these cars, and as you press a button for each car, it's advancing across the screen. And so what we're doing there is based on how many times that button is pressed, we determine its location in relation to the other cars to determine who's winning. And you can imagine if you have like, 50, 60 people all pressing on these buttons at the same time on this frame, you're getting like this really cool, unique effect of like everyone's actually trying to race and make one car win over the other. And of course, all that information is fed back in your app. You get to see, who pressed what and stuff like that, which is really cool. And then on the right, we have our basketball frame. This is another really fun one and added a bit more of a social concept to it. We let you pick a team of some of our, favorite Farcaster users. And once you join that team, you basically have to shoot your shot within 3 seconds of the timer. And based on how close you are to that 3 second mark determines your chance of scoring. And if you score, it's going to go towards your team's points. And then, it'll show the leaderboard there and we have it like reset, I think every day or every hour or something like that. And again, really interesting use case that takes in those interactions and uses them to power something else in your app. So as far as resources, probably the best place you could go to is docs.pinata.cloud/frameworks, special page that we made just for the hackathon. That's going to have all the information about our prizes, all the different blog post resources, guides, API references, pretty much everything you could use or need to start building with Pinata. Another resource that's really nice to look at is pinatadrops.com. That's the primary domain where we do a lot of our frames. And if you go there, you'll see a nice grid of some of the frames that we built. And clicking on them will actually link you to the open source repo that we have that has everything in there. So if you want to see how we've built some of those things, like the Pinata 500 or the basketball frame, they're in that GitHub repo and you can see how we've built them. So a lot of good resources there. And of course, definitely join our channel, Pinata on Farcaster/Pinata. That's pretty much where we drop all of our new stuff, everything that we're working on. It's really, really fun. Okay. And as far as our prizes, we have three prizes up to $10,000 that we're giving out this weekend. The first one is going to be best use of the Pinata or Farcaster API in a frame. So something else that we've just built and recently built is our Farcaster API, which lets you get information about casts or fetch users, channels. It's really, really cool. And so to qualify that one, it's just the best use of that Farcaster API inside of a frame. The other one is very similar, but using our frame analytics. So building a frame that uses frame analytics in a really creative way is something we want to see. And the last one's probably my favorite, which I think is an interesting one, is best client for frames. So, the goal is you want to build a Farcaster client, which is similar to Warpcast or Supercast or Photocaster.xyz, where you're basically feeding posts in. And the goal of it is using Pinata's Farcaster API, analytics, or FDK to build a client that features frames and highlights them as the star of that client. That's something that we'd like to see. And we have multiple posts and repos on building clients. One is a blog post on how we did Photocaster, and another one is how we built a client using Swift UI, doing an iOS native client. So lots of really cool, interesting stuff there. Highly recommend you check it out. If you have any questions, please do let me know. I'll be in the Discord. We have our Pinata partner channel. If you have any problems along the way, I'd be happy to help you out. And thank you guys so much for listening. It is happy to be here.
Awesome. Cheers. Thanks, Steve. And yeah, we do have a few questions in the chat. Let me scroll back up. What about frames.js middleware?
I don't think we have Frames.js middleware. However, the main FDK call that I showed, the first one, that can be used in any framework or anything you're using to build frames with. So that'll be a really easy way to use analytics in Frames.js.
Nice. Okay. And then yeah, there was another question for that. And then I got a type error as well as a 400 when I tried to pass the default frame message from frames.js.
Let me see. Might have to check what that frame message is, because for frame analytics, it's definitely the frame data, so not just the frame message, but the whole thing. So if you want to meet me in the Discord, I can definitely take a better look at that.
Awesome. And do you have a React library handy with those gorgeous graphs?
I don't think we do. I'll have to check to see if we used any library in particular, but we do have some pretty talented designers that have worked with us and built our stuff. So
And what's UID in the cast by hash API?
I'll have to double check that. That might be proprietary to our replicator database. Um, yeah, I'll probably double check that. And if you want to join me in the Discord, I can like answer that for you.
Okay. And yeah, and they had attached a screenshot
Yeah,
of
yep.
the
I
ID as
see
well.
that there. Yeah, cool.
Awesome. Does anybody else have any other questions? And feel free to take yourself off mute and ask as well, or you can continue typing in the Zoom chat. And yeah, and if not, Steve mentioned, he's been, if you haven't noticed already, he's been very active in the Discord channel. So, thank you again, Steve, for being active and helping our hackers out. But yeah, if you
Yeah.
have any questions afterwards, after this workshop's over, oh yeah, Sergey.
Hey, Steve, sorry. Just a quick question on the attribution. You mentioned passing the frame ID. And so if two separate people post the same frame URL, those are going to have separate frame IDs. They're going to be attributed separately.
Actually, what's interesting is that that frame ID is whatever you want it to be. And the results of the analytics can also be filtered by URL as well. So in theory, let's say you have two totally separate frames, but you give them the same frame ID and they're two totally separate URLs. That'll actually go towards the same analytics, but you can still query and separate by URL if you want to.
Right. So the frame ID, I get to decide what that is.
Yep. It's totally whatever you want it to be and helps categorize it
Just
for you. Yeah.
just a string. What do people usually do? Just like a UUID that's
If you
like
want to.
referencing something.
I kind
Yeah.
of I like using just the name of the frame I of it. So, if we use basketball frame, I might just call it basketball. And then, if I want to do a custom interaction, like if someone scores, I might send basketball with custom ID of score. It's totally up to you, however you want to use it. But if you want to use UUIDs to help track in a database, for other clients, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Good question.
Awesome. Cheers. Thanks, Sergey.
Sure.
Any other questions? And yeah, if not, again, thanks, Steve, for the great workshop and presentation. And yeah, if people do have questions after this, you will be able to ask and find them or find answers in them in the Pinata partner Discord channel. So awesome. Cheers. Thanks, everybody. Thanks
Thanks,
again,
Rory.
Steve. And
Appreciate
yeah,
y'all.
in 15 minutes, we'll have the opening ceremony. So don't miss that. So awesome.
Yep.
Cheers.
Be there.
Thank
See you
y'all.
soon. Bye.
Have a good rest of the day.